Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Stripped by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all the fancy naked people in between. I am your host, Steph Sia, aka Sia on camera, online. You can find me on various platforms. If you know where to subscribe, you should know what those links are. I don't have to say them here, but if you want it, it's Sex Panthers, Streammate, OnlyFans, soon to be Night Flirt. I'm on Strip Tap, but I haven't streamed yet. But anyways, all those links are there if you're somehow interested. But this show is not about me. This show is all about destigmatizing sex work, and I do that by bringing people on in the industry onto the show every single week. So whether they are a director, whether they're a producer, they're on-screen talent, they're a cam model, they're a representative from a nonprofit organization, a charity that helps benefit sex workers, I really try to bring as much diversity onto the show so we have a very accurate portrayal of what sex work is and not like what is sensationalized in the media, because that is kind of a portion of what we're talking about today. We're talking about like viral content, sensationalized, clickbaity podcast topics, video clips and stuff like that, which honestly brings a lot of damage to our industry and slaps some negative stereotypes on there, which does nothing for us, really. It gets you views and stuff. We're going to go into it with our esteemed guest today, Laura Desiree. If you don't know who she is, I'll be breaking it all down for you in just a minute. But before we really sink our teeth into all these meaty topics, I just want to say hello to all the lovely Patreon subscribers. Hello. We have got so many of you over there on the other side, which is really great. Thank you so much. There's 3 tiers there if you're interested. I just want to say a quick hello to those who are on the 3rd tier. You guys get a little fan recognition shout out, which is always fun. We've got Ruby from Victoria, BC. We've got Raina all the way from Sweden. We've got Dale Flood, where I am at in Vancouver, Canada. Dan from Red Door Products in Seattle, Washington. McKenna King from Ottawa. We got Bia York, former guest, and obviously one of my favorite like spicy content creators. She's amazing, based in Seattle. Erica Rajo, Geyser, and Snoo from Germany. So thank you guys for subscribing and being a part of the community on Patreon there. If you're interested to know what that is all about, you can get exclusive full video access to all the episodes over there. You get sneak peeks on who I'm bringing on, some topics I'm trying to tackle and cover over this season, the remainder of the season, and hopefully for season 8, we shall see, and some fun announcements, bonus episodes, guest lectures, all the stuff that you don't see here publicly. So, and also if you're wondering where that money goes, it goes towards funding my website, stripbysia.com, and also helps me attend adult industry events. I have not attended anything yet this year. I had meant to, and then things and plans shifted and changed as they do. But that is exactly where your money is going. So if you're interested, there are tiers starting as low as $4 a month. You can go check it out. I won't blab on this any longer, but it's patreon.com/strippedbysia. And yeah, I'm like really excited to get into today's topic. It's a topic that I've kind of like lightly talked about here and there in a few episodes, but it's really nice to have an episode dedicated to this because honestly, I'm pretty sick and tired of seeing this and like sex workers being used for viral content. And we are going to be talking about like, why this can be so damaging to folks in our industry and just our industry as a whole. So we're going to be talking about that. I forgot to introduce myself to you all. You all know me by Steph Sia, aka Sia on camera, aka Kimchi when I'm on stage dancing. I have been a sex worker for over a decade, which is wild to me. I think we're going on 12 or 13 years. 12 years now, which is crazy. Starting off as a sugar baby, then a dancer, then going online and doing all this work. And it's been fun. It's been humbling, but honestly, I've learned so much in the past 5 years that I wish I knew and had in my back pocket for when I started all those years ago. So this show is dedicated to all you lovely naked people out there, or maybe you're listening and you're not part of the community yet, but I hope you're listening to this to get some really great resources out, prepare yourself as much as you can. And honestly, yeah, we tackle some fun topics like what we're going to be doing today. So That being said, I did mention that we have the lovely Laura Desiree on the show, who I've been chasing for a little while. And finally, our schedules aligned. So I'm super stoked to have her on the show. If you're not familiar with who she is, have you been living under a rock? Laura Desiree is an intimacy coordinator. She's an adult creator. She's laughing right now, and an activist. And I'm sure I'm missing a whole bunch of titles, but those are the things that I found. I think former burlesque artist, creative director of a club before, just a lot of projects. And honestly, with sex workers, sometimes it's really hard to keep up with all the projects we do. But I'm very excited to have her on the show today and to spend the next hour with her. And hopefully, you all will learn a thing or two or five today. So please welcome to the show, Laura Desiree. Hello.
Hello. And it's true. We have been chasing each other for eons. Thank you so much for, I guess, finally aligning with me and finding this moment, this golden opportunity. It's great to be here.
Yay. So excited to have you. And, I think you're such a great figure in the industry, and you've done like so much and just accomplished so much in your time. Again, I feel like I just scratched the surface when I was kind of introducing you. So if I could just throw it back to you and
Sure.
you can describe yourself in your own words and terms, however you'd like to be described, and
Sure.
take it away.
Thank you so much. You definitely nailed it. These days, I'm mostly functioning as an intimacy coordinator for a live sex theater, an erotic theater called Sanctum. It's a live event that happens in New York City and Los Angeles monthly. I'm still a content creator. I still host a series of cam shows for a platform called Cam4. But before all of that, yes, the bulk of my years in adult and in sex work, they started as burlesque. So I was a little 21-year-old that got into burlesque in New York City and loved the art form, ended up traveling the world as a performer, was more seduced every single show into the erotic thresholds that I had inside of me. So I wanted to do more nakedness. I wanted to do more of sensual expression. So it wasn't just the removal of clothes. I wanted to start playing with what sharing my sensuality looks like. So yes, that became my entry into nude modeling, into content creation, and 7.5 years as one of the presenters and producers of the web series Naked News. So it's been a journey with many evolutions within it. I've really followed what my desire calls me towards, be it a new kind of kink that I may want to experience privately or something I may want to stage for an audience. It's been a life of really pursuing those little curiosities and pleasure seeking in every possible form.
Wow. I mean, that's quite a career. You've accomplished so much. And take us back to when you first started and you discovered burlesque, and what was that like back in the day, being a 21-year-old, discovering and just playing around and exploring, and the enticing part of burlesque. I'd love to hear a bit of that earlier story.
For sure. I was living away from my family and the world I had known. I'm originally from Toronto, so good Canadian
Canadian.
gal. And I had moved to New York right after high school to get into film studies and producing for film and television. So I was a complete unknown with no direction home, so to speak.
Wow.
And I fell in love with New York nightlife, which is
Hmm.
very easy to do when you're young and you're looking to find community and find a sense of connection with others. There's a very inspired nightlife here, right? You get these big
Hmm.
shows, these big dramatic nightclubs with activations like go-go dancing. And so I started going out to rock and roll clubs. I wanted to get into go-go dancing because I said, gosh, I love to dance. And if I can get on an elevated platform and people can watch me do it, I think I'll go harder than I ever have. And it's true, I did. I got into go-go dancing first. Someone tapped me on the shoulder one night in the Lower East Side and said, you know, there's a school in this city for burlesque. You should
Mm.
sign up for that because you're very comfortable being completely outrageous and being so explosive on a bar top. You should try doing this with, you know, a little bit more dedicated stage time and a little bit more opportunity to tell a narrative. So,
Mm.
yeah, I got into the New York School of Burlesque and learned from the best of the best in the industry because it is a legitimate profession in New York. So I was trained
Mhm.
by some of the legends that live here and still take the stage here. Folks like Darlinda, just Darlinda, Joe Boobs Weldon, Dirty Martini. There was an Jezebel Express, these wonderful
Wow.
pioneers in the business. And so that really gave me a menu of options to express myself with confidence, be it, yes, the removal of clothing, you know, the peeling of a glove, the peeling of a
Mhm.
stocking, the slow zip of a dress. It also gave me confidence in posture and how you're holding the body, framing yourself in spotlight this way, feather fan dancing, feather
Yeah.
boa manipulation, tassel twirling, lap dancing, floor work. I loved it. I loved it. And so that became, you know, everything to me. I forgot about my dreams of becoming a filmmaker. I forgot about my dreams of, you know, ruling the world and winning the Oscars. I said, I want to get into burlesque and I want to do this full throttle. And I did. And I loved it. And touring and finding that community of other sex positive folks was crucial. I think
Mhm.
that's one of the most important things that ever happened to me in my life. It was finding a community of people that want to celebrate that style of expression. If you don't have that in your life, you know, oftentimes we don't know where to seek it out or how to secure a really safe foundation of sexual acceptance. And that for me
Mhm.
came out of the burlesque world.
Wow. Yeah. And that's like hard to find. I feel like a lot of us, when you first start in sex work, whatever wing or corner you are in sex work, it can really be so isolating because you don't have that community aspect of it yet. You don't have the support. You don't have anyone to talk to, no one to celebrate your accomplishments with, or like, talk about your challenges that you've had throughout the day. So seeking a community is so important. And I can understand, like, the draw, because our community is awesome.
Yeah.
Our community is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
it's all embracing as well. Like I find with burlesque being my entry community of sex work, that was important because, you know, so much of burlesque is rooted in protest and revolution. Historically so, it's been an art form that's always pushed against societal norms and always been stigmatized, but still found ways to evolve. And I mean, yes, that is much of sex work, but burlesque is quite conscious and proud of that aspect that they come from political revolution. So that
mhm.
was something that gave me an enormous amount of confidence that I've got a community around me. There is support around me. And, you know, should we ever be under attack, these are my people.
Right. Yeah. No, that's it's so great to have that in like your back pocket, which is so inspiring. And like, I mean, I think that for me with burlesque, I also dabbled in burlesque very, very briefly when I was very young, but also just the protests, the politicalness of it too can be quite a draw. And also just like the activism that's embedded within burlesque too, and also within our community in general,
Mm, mm.
can be really motivational and inspirational. I mean, moving on, like with like your career and after burlesque, I guess you started to dabble into other things in your career. Like, where were you being drawn in at that time, and why? I'm
Yeah.
curious too.
Yeah, after burlesque, I was getting into a lot of experimental theater. I was living in Toronto at this point. I moved back home. I started a production company for live burlesque events, and that fizzled out rather quick. I realized it was more than just burlesque and the definition of burlesque that existed at the time that I was
Mhm.
curious to explore. And Toronto had a very fertile nightlife that was inspired by New York. And so I had a
Mhm.
lot of friends that were club owners that at the time were saying, you know, it'd be nice to have a performance space that felt like some of the clubs in New York, you know, that felt like the box. And if you know the box in New York, you know that
Mhm.
that's an establishment that thrives in shock content and
Mm-hmm.
experimental theater, right? You get a lot of these, it's a variety show of sexy, freaky, fabulous, shocking content that's performed all night long on that stage while the rest of it is a nightclub. And
Mm-hmm.
so I worked at a club in Toronto that said, hey, we want to emulate that. Do you want to come on as creative director? So it
Mm-hmm.
was a great way of starting to really get accustomed to building narratives and directing scenes for other performers, learning about how to host consent conversations, work within the boundaries of other performers, levels of comfort and what their curiosities were in their own unique expression. I had performers that were a part of this cast at a club called Candyland,
Mm-hmm.
and these performers ranged from great vocalists, singers, people that did opera, people that did really great breakdancing, people that were, Cirque du Soleil acrobats on their time off. And then, of course, burlesque performers comfortable in various degrees of nudity. And
Right.
so, with the one instruction being, Laura, I want you to make this entertainment so dangerous and so exciting that the cops get called. I
Oh.
had to think very creatively because I
Yeah.
don't actually want the cops to get called. No one
No,
who's responsible navigating, sexual expression of any kind wants the cops involved. No one does.
totally.
So I had to think very creatively, and that was a great 2 year experience for me. That's how the career started shifting from just performer to more of a leadership role, bringing others into a safe experience and a ripe mind for expressing themselves sensually
Mm-hmm.
and authentically. Then I got the knock at my door to join Naked News. So
There you go. Oh my gosh.
yeah. So then I said, okay, you know what? I'm just going to work naked for 7 years of my life, and that's what that was.
Which is great, by the way.
Thanks.
I mean, like you were talking about, like creating safe environments for performers. And, like I guess that was during a time when like the title of intimacy coordinator didn't even really exist yet. And
Yeah.
then I guess it kind of planted seeds to, I guess now, like with a more formal title of intimacy coordinator. Like, talk to us for those who don't know, because there's a lot of listeners that are not even in the industry that are listening to the show too. But can you explain or define in your own words and terms like what an intimacy coordinator is and what their role is for that?
It's a very new role, the intimacy coordinator or intimacy director. The director applies to stage work, the coordinator applies to film and TV. Technically, I'm an intimacy director because what I do is mostly stage work.
Mm-hmm.
But the intimacy coordinator's job, their function is to be the representative and the individual that works with the performers embodying and depicting the sensuality that is a part of the job, a part of the
Mm-hmm.
production. This could range from a handhold that two performers are expected to complete. It could be as evolved and as escalated as someone enacting a rape scene or a scene of sexual violence. It could be nudity that's being depicted. It could be the beautiful, loving, most umptious, delicious, intimate, scene that two actors in love with each other are meant to perform. The job is to ensure that all of the actors and the performers of this work feel respected, feel considered, feel safe, and feel that their consent has been made clear through every step of the process. This means rehearsals. This
Mm-hmm.
means the actual moments on stage or while production is happening. And sometimes this can mean after as well, to have that
Mm-hmm.
debrief, to ensure that what we ventured into as performers hasn't left a permanent discomfort in us, that we're leaving feeling proud of the work that we've done, and that it's an experience that we leave feeling confident about. So a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
times, there's a lot of friction in the entertainment industry around this job title. You get folks that
Mm-hmm.
say an intimacy coordinator gets in the way. of a director's vision. Oh, an intimacy
Oh,
coordinator is like the hall monitor of the party. Like we're here
right.
to just create art. There shouldn't be someone between the performer and the director. And I've always felt this and always said this, that the best performance possible is going to come from a performer that feels that their consent has been focused throughout the entire process, that it has been the centerpiece of entering into this. It's
Mm,
it's imperative, and we did have to
mm.
learn that the hard way. It was called Me Too. We
Yeah,
had to learn that the
100%.
hard way, of an industry coming to grips and confronting some horrible age old systems of power that have kept people without the opportunity to speak for themselves and to govern for themselves and to be safe as they exist in the creative space.
Absolutely. I know now that you mention like the entertainment industry, because yes, this is not only for our community in the
Yeah.
adult industry, but this also goes towards anyone who's performing on stage, whether it's a theater, whether they're in movies or acting or anything like that. It's important to have an intimacy coordinator there to kind of oversee that everything is being done with consent. And like I can just think of the current case with like Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively. That, I mean, that's such a current topic too, and it's an unfortunate situation there. I mean, what's your take on that situation? Because it's complicated, of course,
It's
but
extremely complicated. And
mm-hmm.
here is a blurry line, right? A lot of the time, the work that we do as intimacy coordinators can get very close to an HR
Right.
situation. You know what I mean? We are
Yes.
not HR, nor are we therapists. So
Mm-hmm.
it is important to have that borderline where an intimacy coordinator can take note of what may be shared with them from a performer experiencing something. But if it's beyond our jurisdiction, which is anything beyond what we are creating within the script and the directions of the director, if it's something beyond that and it's interpersonal that's happening between performers, say offset or at another time, then that is something that you have to bring to the HR department. That's something that gets
Mm-hmm.
handed off elsewhere. But
Right.
a lot of the times, we are the first point of contact for performers because we've built the trust.
Mm-hmm.
We are the ones working so closely with performers saying, if there is a concern, if there is an experience that is preventing you from feeling confident about the work you're doing, then we need to know about it. So it is the
Mm-hmm.
responsibility of the IC or the intimacy coordinator at that point to refer the performer elsewhere, to ensure that that is being handled and not to take it on ourselves. Because I might
Mm-hmm.
be able to take someone out of a heightened trauma moment to a place of safety to then hand them off, but it's not my job to do the processing.
Right, right. And there's a lot of processing with that too. I mean,
Oh, yes.
talking about like, okay, couple questions here. So I want to know, and this might seem an obvious thing, but like, why is it so important to have intimacy coordination on set, especially in the adult industry or anything to do with erotic entertainment? Why that should be a requirement? Why that should be absolutely mandatory? I'd love to hear your take on that. And is it
I love
mandatory?
this.
Is it even a
It should
thing?
be. It
Yeah, I
should
feel
be.
like it's
It's
not.
it's not it's not a law. In no
Yeah.
way is it a law. I do think it should be mandatory. 9,000%. I couldn't be more sure of anything in my life.
Mhm.
There is there's an unfortunate stereotype that folks that are making a living as professional sex performers, porn performers, sensual performers, people that create sexual content, that they don't have an understood set of boundaries. That's a
Mhm.
general public outsider misconception about our world.
Right.
Um, there also can be over time perhaps a conditioning that sets in where we don't necessarily ask ourselves, well, what are the specifics of my boundaries? Sure, I might not enjoy, I might not want anal on this production today, but what about other kinds of interactions in that area? I
Mm-hmm.
always use the example of, say choking is something that's being suggested for one of our scenes in Sanctum in our show that we do on stage, which, like I
Mm-hmm.
said, is very narrative driven. We do really beautiful storytelling with, yes, erotic elements to it. I work with the performers very closely, and we take what the director says and we say, let's break this down and understand what the physicality might look like and ask, let's get specific. What feels yes? What feels no? So if there
Mm-hmm.
is supposed to be a hand on a throat, you need to consider what's the level of tension that is acceptable. You can't just say, "Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine with choking, whatever." Well, no,
Right.
what's the duration there? And does the person who's doing it know how to do it responsibly and respectfully? Because there's two people involved in this, right? So
Right.
there are so many areas where someone could just leave not feeling entirely sure that what they did was good for them or good for the other person. And that's where the intimacy coordinator comes in to make sure that
Mm-hmm.
we are assessing and addressing as we go. I think they're crucial to any set depicting intimacy, whether it's simulated or unsimulated.
Right, right. And I guess like you would obviously probably work very closely with the director,
Mm-hmm.
and also for actors on set as well. Do you ever have any kind of clashes with the director in terms of like when you see or witness or you're seeing what's being conveyed not exactly aligning with their vision, what is ethical, I
Sure.
guess. Like, yeah, I mean, how has your experience been with that?
I work with such a phenomenal director right now at Sanctum. Our director is this brilliant mind. She comes from the world of burlesque as well. She's extremely sex positive and very well versed in, subcultures of kink and different kinds of performance art styles. So I'm very much a fan of what she brings to the canvas every time. The only thing I find myself saying if it comes to any stop and start is like, hey, slow down. I love this idea. I love this vision. And maybe we're exploring a new kind of BDSM play, but let's just slow down for a moment before we fully conceive of an idea. Let's check with the people you have casted for it if this is something that they are excited and willing to enter into. That's the only
Hmm.
thing, is that it's never me correcting, oh, we shouldn't do that. That's
Right.
not a path to go down. I just find us, if anything, maybe making that pause and asking, great, do we have willing participants that want to embody this work? Because it is embodying it, especially when it's not simulated. This is real
Right.
sex.
Yeah, because Sanctum is both simulated and real sex. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Right. Do you find it's harder or more challenging, or I don't know, it's up to you, directing, well, not directing, but maybe kind of directing or suggesting your opinion in simulated sex versus real sex? I'm curious.
The differences between those?
Mm-hmm.
There's I don't want to say that there is too much of a difference. I mean, the people that are embodying the simulated are just as available to the emotions and the concerns of the people embodying the real, right?
Right.
So it's not for me to say that one deserves more attention than the other. I mean, absolutely, the real sex, that is a level of intensity that is potentially, yes, physically a lot more than the
Right.
simulated work, but the simulated work can come with so much connotation as well. We
Mm-hmm.
don't know what people's histories are uniquely, and it's not for us as intimacy coordinators to force someone to unearth their deepest story of trauma, but it is for us to consider that that might live there. They might live with that. And if they are, going into this brave moment of, yes, their thing, they're acting, but it might be touching and rubbing against a trauma that lives inside of them. What do they need
Mm.
to ensure that they're going to execute this safely and express this safely and interact with this material safely? That's what our job is. So I don't think there is
A big
necessarily
difference.
Yeah, a huge difference. And if there is, I would love people's thoughts on this. But for me, I would
Totally.
approach both of them with that level of consideration, right? And nuance.
Absolutely. For sure.
Hi, it's Carly David, founder of PS Group, marketing agency for sex workers by sex workers. We're here to give you the tools you need to stand out. From slick websites to next level marketing strategies, we want to turn your fans into loyal customers. Our fees are project based, no commissions, no percentages. We believe you should keep the rewards of your hard work. So if you're serious about taking your brand to the next level, visit us at sexworkmarketing.com. Say hello. We'd love to talk to you.
Okay, we're going to switch gears a little bit because I definitely
Yeah.
want to get into some spicy opinions here. Okay, so this can be applicable to adult companies, clubs, directors, wanting to make viral content. People want views, people want clicks, people want new fans for their accounts, whatever. People want to grow. I read an interview that you did in regards to the club, I think Candyland, when you were working there in Toronto. And I think the owner there was like, he mentioned something, you wanting to produce maximally shocking content for its own just to draw crowds in. That can be a big problem for performers. Can you elaborate on that? Because I think this is a great transition to go into what we want to talk about.
Shock content.
Mm-hmm.
Shock content. I mean, it certainly has a place in our world today,
Yeah.
right? And
Yes.
the desire to provide that to an audience is real because it gets attention. But
Yes.
what are the implications to the person performing or presenting the shock content? That's what we need to be conscious of, right? What are the
Mm-hmm.
implications that could be permanent to that person? And so, yeah, I'm looking at our world today. I'm looking at our culture today. I'm looking at our industry today. My goodness, is
Yeah.
there an appetite for stories of extremely shocking experiences, for
Mm-hmm.
tales of the most shocking, the most depraved, the most outrageous? We just finished a long 2.5 weeks of live shows for our
Mm-hmm.
industry, right? We had XBiz, we had
Mm-hmm.
X3, we had AVN.
AVNs.
Woo!
It's a
I
lot.
attended all of it. And more than ever, did I see people out there collecting sound bites and content for their channels. So this has
Right.
obviously been on the increase over the years, but this year I have never seen so many people interviewing on the spot. And of course, big podcasts, which have now grown
Yes.
in such popularity, hosting recordings at these shows. There was a lot
Mm-hmm.
of it. So there we go.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, we'll talk about podcasts because, like, I deliberately do not do that for my podcast. It's just not aligned with my vision and stuff too. But like, and I don't ask questions like that because I think they're when you're asking questions and you're asking about people's sexual lives and their career, it's still an intimate thing, and I feel people are just trying to get a reaction. They are trying
Mm,
to get a reaction, which is marketing, which
yeah.
means dollars, which means fans and all that stuff too. But I feel like there
Yeah.
is a certain degree of responsibility that we as podcasters need to take. And unfortunately, it's a lot of male podcasters doing this,
Yeah.
especially prevalent in the adult industry, which is really disappointing to see, but also not surprised. But also at the same time, why isn't anyone saying anything about it? Because it's, as you've also noticed, this has been on the rise in the past few years or so, and I just feel like it's damaging.
Yeah, it's a unique conundrum of sorts, right? I've
Mm-hmm.
been in and out of the podcast game for the last almost decade. I've hosted a series of podcasts. I've hosted a series of podcasts that were produced by other companies. And
Mm-hmm.
with that came a lot of direction from the higher ups. And I can
Right.
very openly talk about this, that many a time I have been asking some of these questions that I now feel are tasteless or distasteful and
Yeah.
potentially damaging. I have asked them because I have been asked to ask them, because
Mm-hmm.
I have been asked to set up a show with the most success possible. And so here's the thing, you look at the trends, right?
Yeah.
The number one thing that seems to be getting attention are these shocking confessions of what it's like to be a sex worker.
Yes.
It's not the normal things. It's not like,
No.
hey, I'm really happy to work my own hours and be able to support my family and, express myself in this way. That's not what's trending. What's trending
Right.
are the outrageous stories of, how many,
Yeah.
loads did you swallow? I don't know how much of that I can even say on this. So I won't
Yeah.
go
Oh, you
into it,
could
but
say it, but yes, I understand what
you
you're
know what
saying.
I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So this is the rub, right? Is that we know this is what is gaining traction online. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the times the hosts of these shows, they're not going to be damaged. They're not going to
Yeah.
be negatively impacted. They don't have
Yes.
to live with a soundbite that will live forever saying that they did this, saying
Right.
that, making this confession of the most depraved experience they've ever had. Um, can you blame an individual that wants to participate in this cycle? Is my other question, however. Because maybe these
Mm-hmm.
individuals, the guests on these shows, they want the views. They want the growing in their fan base and their following. And this is a way to do it.
Yeah.
But when you zoom out, this is contributing to society's understanding of who we are and what this industry is.
Right.
That's what we need to be cognizant of.
Of course, because it can be certainly really damaging and again reinforcing the negative stereotypes that we all know exist. I don't have to name them here because we've talked about it before, but it's disappointing to hear because, like, for example, like with the whole Lily Collins thing and Bonnie Blue sleeping with 100 men in a day. Now it's like sleeping with 1,000 men in a day. Like, where do we the line keeps moving, and the constant need to one up each other or at least exceed what that next crazy thing is.
Yeah.
Like, that is, I mean, I have many thoughts about this. I feel
Yeah.
for people it's really addicting. It can be competitive in a way too. It can make you a lot of money, and but then at what cost though is what I'm worried about.
It's like I said, we are hopefully, if you're in this industry, I really hope that it is for autonomous reasons. You are here
Mm-hmm.
out of your own decision making to be here, because we know that when you enter into sex work, you are signing up for an enormous, very nuanced world of stigma that you might not know every potential of until you've been in it and you feel it in interactions with friends and interactions with employment options outside of this industry. As you
Mm-hmm.
evolve within the industry, you might not know, but you have to know that you will encounter them along the way. If you choose to go on to one of these podcasts and just tell these stories and feed into it, that is your choice. That is
Yeah.
absolutely your choice. I can't stop you. I do hope that there is an understanding. I feel like I'm absolutely repeating myself once again, Steph, that we are just looping around in this circle here, that
Mm-hmm.
it continues to inform the outside world, general public, general society, what this industry is and who the people are within it. And it's
Mm-hmm.
quite reductive. It's
Yes.
reductive to only let that be what surfaces. So that's my
Mm-hmm.
fear, is that this isn't helpful to the stigma. This is harmful to the stigma. It is going to intensify things, all for the sake of what? A couple of laughs, some extra
Yeah.
follows, some more subscribers to your Patreon, some more traffic to your pages.
Mm-hmm.
This content lives forever.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people just don't realize that, or they will outweigh the pros. They're better than the cons and stuff too. Like, I just going back to the whole Lily Collins thing. Like, I just remember like watching clips of that interview. And like, just, and I can't speak for her. I don't know exactly all the details of what entailed there, but yeah, that was, if you're not familiar with what happened there, it was a whole stunt, and they call them stunts because they really are stunts, of sleeping with 100 men in a day. And like, from what I gathered from watching bits and parts of that documentary, is like, some people were not being vetted correctly. Their general sex education was not there. There was no real support system for her. What about the aftercare? Who are these people? Just a lot of big question marks that really concerned me, and especially for a woman as young as she is. Like, yes, she's an adult, but like, I just felt like it felt like a really naive situation where honestly she was getting taken advantage of for the sake of
Right.
fame and virality. Where's
Because
the
of how
line?
fast, right? This is
Yeah.
how fast trends move, right? And so there
Mm-hmm.
is this competitiveness, this
Yes.
this intensifying, this momentum that's growing and growing and growing. And we have this saying in intimacy coordination. It's like one of the values and one of the pillars, and it being urgency is the death of agency. I go back to that
Mm-hmm.
so often, right? Because when you are in that competitive mode of, hey, I want to stay on top, I want to stay within the momentum, I want to keep elevating, I need to be relevant, I'm in entertainment and I know things are moving fast, that is very urgent to cater to. It's
Yes.
very urgent to play to that. So you do not want to be making those decisions too urgently that you are left with no agency of yourself. So if you
Mm-hmm.
want to go on one of those podcasts and open your arms to the firing squad of just how many outrageous questions you're going to have come at you, be aware that you may not have a moment to pause and consider what's going to happen if I answer this question and tell this story. I
Mm-hmm.
might get a laugh from this host. I might get a couple follows on my thing, but do I want this out there forever? Happy to be am I happy to be framing experiences of my life this way?
Yeah. Because that stuff lives forever. And I think if people, might forget about that. And like, I just wanted to bring up, how dehumanizing these clips are. Like, for me, it's like, if something, I had something that went viral a long time ago about me, which was about, there was like a sugar baby show that was filmed as part of it in Vancouver that went viral, and for the wrong reasons. And I was naive to go on that, of course, thinking that they had our best interest in mind and we're going to talk about sex work and education and educating the masses. It was not that. And that lived on the internet for a really long time and killed my dating life. People are like, oh my god, you're their sugar baby and you sleep with old men and this whole thing. And it's like, that stuff lives forever out there. And I just felt I was just minimized to, oh, you're that sugar baby girl. And that's like the only label I had for a while in like 2017. It was
Right.
horrible. And it just diminishes us to some kind of like sex bot, sex doll thing that
Yeah.
doesn't have a name, feelings, sensitivity, stuff like that. So
There's no humanity in that.
no,
Like,
there isn't. It's
there's no
awful.
humanity in that. It's so limited, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
when you make fame out of a moment like that, you are very limited to having any humanity beyond that. So again,
Mm-hmm.
if you wish to go forth being, the two girls, one cup situation,
Right.
there's very
Remember
limited
that.
humanity beyond that. It's so shocking and it reaches such a level of infamy. And now we are creating with this in mind. And why are we letting this happen to our industry? Why are we
Mm-hmm.
letting this become the reputation? We already have a lot that we are up against when it comes to just existing. Now
Yes.
you want to continue to turn the lives of those of us who live within this into the freak show at the circus. It is. It's
Yeah.
the freak show at the circus, like gather around, meet the freaks. None of these people are normal. None of these people lead a traditional, normal, or healthy life. In fact, all of it's
Mm-hmm.
quite skewed and freakish. Come close, says the carnival
Right.
barker.
Right.
Like,
It
let's hear
is like
about it.
that. That's crazy. And like especially like even when we're talking about podcast hosts and asking like certain questions, like I'm very cautious about how I'm delivering the questions, how I'm communicating certain questions that could be triggering. I always have like a trigger or content warning if we're talking about something traumatizing. But like I'm so tired of hearing questions like, what was the most traumatizing thing? What was the worst sex you've ever had in your life? What's the craziest sex? Like, it's so, again, going back to your freak show metaphor, it literally is that.
And it's so, at this point, more than anything, it's boring.
It
It's
is
just
boring.
boring at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's so redundant. It's just
Yeah.
so, are we not, have we not evolved further than this in our
Mm-hmm.
fascinating, multifaceted world where sex workers exist in all kinds of new professions and variations of it, where we are experts in technology in all sorts of ways, where we have interacted and observed human behavior unlike any other demographic? This is still what you want to ask? For
Gosh.
sex workers, we have access to human behavior and humanity in a very unique way, a
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable way, a very discreet way, a very special way. And
Yeah.
this is what you want to ask us? You know, what someone's a smoker's load tasted like? You want to ask us, like, if you ever had an accident during anal? That's what you want to ask us?
Yeah.
I just think it's so boring at this
It
point.
is.
Like, we have the chance to talk to people that have a sexual experience landscape that is just so vast and so
Mm-hmm.
varied. And what have they learned about themselves and about others and about some of the realities around this myth, these myths of sex? There's so much more to get into. Like, I just
Totally.
think there's so much we could be talking about, and yet we're still talking about this old shit.
I know. It just seems like high school to me. Like, have we not grown past the age of 15? Like, why are we still asking these questions? Like, have we not evolved as humans? Like, what is going on?
Right, right,
Like,
right,
it's so
right.
disappointing to see and hear questions like that because it just seems like I'm just like a play toy thing. I'm like
I
a
think that they're
monkey, make me do things.
totally,
Like,
totally. I think there's so many missed opportunities for like sex education, which is already such an endangered area of education, especially in America. There's so
yes.
many missed opportunities to include the lives, the research, the experience of sex workers in that education. And I think that there's ways that we can do it on our own channels like this and in our
Mm-hmm.
own conversations and what we make public about our interactions, be it printed interviews, articles, or podcasts. There's
Mm-hmm.
ways of sharing that knowledge and getting that out there as opposed to just feeding into what the society's stereotype of the industry already fucking is.
Right. I mean, what does it tell you about our society and the culture that we're currently living in right now? Like, I feel like we're going backwards sometimes, like lately.
Yeah.
It seems that
Yeah.
way. It's terrible.
Yeah, it certainly does. I think that we have an appetite for the extremes. I think that we
Mm-hmm.
want grand polarization right now. You know, we're
Yes.
seeing the very, very goods and the very, very bads. And you also look at what's happening in mainstream movies these days. A lot of it is like these, Marvel and DC films about very polarized characters, the good guys and the bad guys.
Right.
There's not a lot of what's happening in between. And we're seeing these mass divides in our own country right now. You know, we're seeing
Yes.
there's the right and the left. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think a lot of that divide is building um, these potent contributions to our culture, including, hey, this stereotype about sex workers, let's get loud about it. Let's really blow this thing up and make it the most entertaining it can be, as opposed to maybe showing how nuanced it is, as opposed to maybe diving into some longer conversations about
Mm-hmm.
what and who exist in sex work, how
Right.
and why they operate within it. You know, that is a much more extensive conversation to have. Do we have the attention span for that? I don't know.
That's another
Are we
thing.
going to keep everyone safe as we navigate confronting some of these biases? No. So
No.
let's just keep it to the extremes, the grand polarizations, and then that way everyone's satisfied.
Yeah. I mean, like another comment too, and just thinking about it right now, like in terms of like, there's so much content again that is just being thrown at us right, left, and center. And the short form content, especially too. And you're talking about, do we have the attention span for it? I mean, there's a reason why this stuff has like a pull, why this viral content like really just sticks, right? But I mean, what is a way that we can just counter that? Like, how can we do that? Like, I would love to see some more productivity and meaningful conversations, and getting to actually know your favorite porn stars and stuff too, not just the stuff you can easily Google. Like, it's just
Yeah.
boring. But yeah,
I
I'd
think
love to see.
for sure. I agree completely. I think that a lot of what needs to happen is, continuing to share ourselves authentically. Um, Again, some people in this industry love living within a persona and love playing a part. Great. That's good for them. Amazing.
Hmm.
Obviously that's going to inform the world about who makes up this industry. So yeah, it's going to take a lot of repackaging of this content that we're making intentionally. Like, I mean, this right here, this,
Hmm.
ethical, modern conversation that isn't just about the shock content. We're actually investigating how we've gotten to this point. How do we get that to surface? How do we make that interesting to people? That's the
Yeah,
question, right? How do
I
we
know.
make that the excitement? I don't know. Maybe we got to put some crazy graphics on it, Steph. Maybe we got
Maybe too.
to.
We'll figure something out when the social media on this episode comes out.
Totally, totally, totally.
I guess like my last thought on this topic before we jump into Q&A for
Yeah.
yourself is like, who is responsible for putting this content out here? Who share, like, is it a shared responsibility of the podcast hosts, companies, the guests? Like, I mean, it's popular for a reason. People are consuming it, but if we really want change to happen, like, who needs to be responsible for wanting to make this change happen? I don't really think it's certain podcast hosts like myself, but like I feel like a lot of the stuff that is quote unquote popular out there, like, again, they get off scot
Yeah.
free with this kind of stuff, right? And it's just disappointing
Well, look,
to say the least.
as you know, podcasts cost money. Making
Yes.
them costs. Getting them to the masses costs. So ultimately, if we do want to see a change happen to the environment and the ecosystem of podcasting, especially within those that host conversations of sex work and those in the adult industry, some of these money companies that are funding podcast projects need to electively say, we want to make a show that feels like this. We want to make a show that serves this purpose. We want to make a
Right.
show that fosters this change.
Mm-hmm.
They will likely have to accept that it's not going to give them the biggest ROI. It's not going to have
Mm-hmm.
the biggest financial gain necessarily, but they will be activating a change. It's going
Mm-hmm.
to be something that costs money, because how many people have started hosting these conversations? And yeah, your reach is your reach. You
Yeah.
can pay to have your reach go further, but your reach is your reach. So I think it's about these bigger companies that are investing in professional podcasts that are going out to the masses with big marketing campaigns and
Mm-hmm.
flashy promo packages. Those are the ones that need to invest in shows of this nature that that
Right.
that demonstrate this change. So I
Yeah.
look, I'm talking to all of you companies out there. If any of
Mm-hmm.
you want to be leaders in this, like, now's the time.
Now's the time. The dance continues, Laura. The
Yeah, babe.
dance continues. Well, speaking of questions, we are going to go through some questions as well. And luckily, these questions are not the common ones that I get sometimes with fans. I love fans, but sometimes the questions I get, I'm like, I don't want to ask this on air, but actually, these ones seem to be like PG-13. So, yay.
Excited.
We'll dig into it. So, this one came from Instagram. This person writes in, where have you felt the most rejected? If you feel comfortable asking that or answering
Sure,
that.
sure, sure. Where have I felt the most rejected? It was some of my early years on the show Naked News, funny enough.
Mm,
I came from the world of burlesque where we are radically inclusive. I mean, we can be more radically inclusive. Every possible entertainment industry could be. But, I came from the world of burlesque and I entered into Naked News where I thought I was a prime specimen for that show. And I did, for the first few years, receive so much feedback about, why is your hair short? Why do you not have a bigger ass? She should get Botox.
oh my God.
She like there was so much of that, especially in the early years. I had a producer that would send me screenshots of my butt in the butt cam and say, in an email, do not wear these panties again. They do nothing for you. So that was like
Oh my
legit
God.
rejection. And
Yeah.
that felt awful. Oh, that was
I'm
it. That was
sorry to hear
probably the
that.
worst. It's real. People know it exists. That's out there.
Oh my God. You're not the only person that was a former host of, not me, but my friend of mine was also a host of Naked News and also did not have some great things to say like that on those lines. But we'll talk
Yeah.
about that off air. Next question is, what is something the person across from you doesn't know? What is something, I'm sitting across from you virtually, what is something I don't know about you, Laura?
Something you don't know about me.
I think there's a
Oh,
lot.
good. There's so much. I'm like, where to start? Where to begin? I mean, I've started talking about it more recently, but it's something that like people just don't expect. Like I can have paralyzing anxiety some days to the point
Wow.
where I don't feel confident in any degree to go out and be social and be like presentable to the world. A lot of
Mm,
the times, those of us that have been in entertainment in any form, we give this invincibility,
right.
and that's just not a reality. And I have some really low days where I don't feel like I can do anything successful, and so that's a challenge that
Mm-hmm.
even at this point in my career where you think, oh yeah, she knows it all, she can handle it all, absolutely not. I still get shook some days. I
Yeah,
still deal with that.
that's humbling. I love to hear that. This person writes in, dream celebrity lover? Question mark.
I change it all the time, but I think for now I'm really feeling Adrian Brody right now.
Okay, I can see that.
I'm really feeling Adrian Brody. I don't know if it's like I watched The Brutalist recently. He's always been like kind of a float around player in my mind, but he did just do that Instagram post because he got nominated for an Oscar, and he's like walking through
Right.
the streets of New York, and I'm like, oh shit, this guy's accessible. Like he's on the streets. Should I get out on the streets?
Fair enough. I would be
Yeah,
thinking the same thing.
yeah.
I think for me, it's always been like Keanu Reeves. I just like love the dark, mysterious sexiness and just like,
Seriously.
yeah, I love him. He's a sexy beast to me.
I saw him one day when I was at the Bowery Hotel in New York. It was pouring rain and no one was on the back patio. He was standing against the gate reciting something. It might have been lines for like an upcoming
Yeah.
movie. It was the most dramatic thing I'd ever seen anyone do. He was
This sounds
standing on an
dramatic.
empty patio with the rain coming down a gate, just reciting to no one. Very iconic. Very epic.
This would be a Keanu Reeves thing. I could just picture it. It's very realistic.
Totally.
Um, this other person writes, what is the biggest what if in your mind?
Oh, what if? Oh, I like that.
What
Oh,
if?
what if?
That's a good question.
Uh, oh, what if? What if there isn't a tomorrow?
Deep.
Do you ever think that? I do sometimes. What
Deep.
if there isn't a tomorrow? What if part of it is because I have a really serious kink for those end of the world movies, you know, like
Day After Tomorrow, or
Day After
like,
Tomorrow, Towering Inferno, Poseidon Adventure, these
yes,
destruction movies where like the end of the world. I don't know why, something about that intensity is a real turn on for me. So if I just say to myself, what if there isn't a tomorrow, I can get really hot about the present moment. Oh my God.
like
So
right
let's
now.
do it. Whatever it is, let's do it.
And this last question came in from a fellow sex worker from Twitter, from X. It's basically a two-part question. So we'll do the first question first. But what is the biggest misconception about being an intimacy coordinator?
That we are the fun police, that an intimacy
Mm-hmm.
coordinator will get in the way of any vision of a creative leader or director, and that is the wrong tone to take, because if anything, we are the individuals that are going to get your performers to the level of embodying and performing your vision with such certainty and such confidence about who they are. It's going to be better than it would have been without us.
Good answer. Yeah, good answer. And that's challenging for sure. I hate having that reputation for that. And last question, the second half there is, how can we talk about sex work in a real way without all the shock value?
Yeah, this is what today's been all about, right? I think we
Yes.
can talk about sex work in a real way by hearing from the diverse voices that make up this industry. That's a
Mm-hmm.
huge part of it, right? Sex work is an enormous workforce. There are
Yes.
so many people within it, and not everyone is earning the high earnings of those OnlyFans creators that are at the 0.1%. There are
Right.
people that are doing this part time. There are people
Mm-hmm.
doing this as a generational hand me down from the people that raised them. There are people doing this work out of their own decision to do so. That is not
Mm-hmm.
the entirety of this workforce, however. So that is another piece of stigma that everyone in this has been coerced into it. No, it is not.
Right.
Just like any industry, there's going to be folks that have entered into it under pretenses that I would call cruel and beyond
Mm.
humane. Really, it's not the entirety of our workforce. There are autonomous sex workers. We need to hear their stories too. We need to hear the stories of people that have used the most creative ways to navigate all of the rejection, all of the stigma, and all of the landmines that society has put out for us. Because
Heck
those are
yeah.
stories of resilience. Those are
Right.
stories of bravery beyond any fucking storybook, comic book hero you're going to get. And those are
Mm-hmm.
real stories too. So we just need to hear from a diverse um, representation of folks that make up sex work. I think that's a big part of getting a more realistic understanding of the lives lived within it.
Absolutely, because it's such a vast landscape here in the world of sex work,
Mm,
and that is honestly a reason why I do the show, because there's so much of us out there, and there's so many different corners of it as well. And I mean, today was such a really great glimpse into the work that you do, Laura, as an intimacy coordinator, intimacy director, and also just thank you so much for engaging in this conversation with me today. Because again, this is a topic I've been wanting to tackle for a bit, and you've got so many great points there that I'm hoping a lot of people would resonate with, and hopefully bigger people out there are listening too, that, maybe there should be a shift
yeah.
in the conversations
Yeah.
we're having.
I
So
hope so, Steph. I hope. And like, babe, we could have gone on another 5 hours on that. We
I
could have
know.
gotten to the nitty gritty of it, but I think y'all know who we're talking about and what we're talking about. Every time you open up your social media, boom, there it is.
Yes.
Some incredibly shocking conversation being held about the lives and experiences of sex workers. And it doesn't need to be so sensationalized. So
Yeah.
that's my big thought here.
Think about the people that you're talking about. Think about like how
Mm,
this is going to affect them later on, like
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's often missed. So thanks for bringing this to light today. But before we let you go, where can we all find you?
You can connect with me on the great wide web by finding me at thelauradesiree.com. You'll find articles there. You'll find opportunities for newsletters. And of course, you can also get me on social media, Laura X Desiree on Instagram. On X, I am the Laura Desiree. Lots of updates going out and links that will connect you to my spicy links. Of course, are posted on those pages as well. So, hey, don't be a stranger, get connected. I can't wait to introduce you to all the wonders that are my world and keep you informed along the way.
Amazing. And if you all want to get in touch with myself, if you like the episode, if you hate the episode, if you have things to say, I'd love to hear from you regardless. It is Stripped by Sia on X, Stripped by Sia on Blue Sky, Stripped by Sia podcast on Instagram. And if you yourself want to perhaps join the show, become a guest, my books are open, so you can go check it out. It's patreon.com. Oh, sorry, Patreon. I mean, yes, also subscribe to my Patreon, patreon.com/strippedbysia, but strippedbysia.com. There's a contact page there. We can fill in the form, pitch yourself. I'd love to hear what kind of ideas and topics you would bring forth, because I mentioned, like, this is a huge landscape. I want to be able to encompass as many stories as I can here and diverse voices. So please do that. And last but not least, do your homework, rate and review the show, 5 stars on Spotify and Apple. That's the best way for folks to find us. And that's it for today. We've got new episodes every single Sunday, dropping at midnight Pacific Standard Time. And we'll catch you all in for another episode next week. Thanks so much, Laura, for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Mwah. See you next time.
You're listening to Stripped by Sia, hosted, produced, and edited by Steph Sia. Music by Ted D. Graphic design by Maria Bellanderama, and photography by Ian Dabrin.